afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining APDA for Caring with Confidence, Navigating Parkinson's Changes in a Parent. We are so grateful to have Lianna Marie here with us today. Lianna is a best-selling author, speaker, and passionate advocate for the Parkinson's community. For almost 30 years, she served as caregiver and chief cheerleader for her mom, walking with her through every stage of the disease as they learned and adapted together. Determined to make the journey easier for others, Lianna founded allaboutparkinsons.com, an online hub that has connected tens of thousands of people with Parkinson's, their families, and caregivers worldwide. She currently serves as the American Parkinson Disease Association Regional Director of Marketing and Communications, helping advance awareness, education, and support for people impacted by Parkinson's. Lianna's first book, Everything You Need to Know About Parkinson's Disease, has reached readers in nearly 50 countries and spent multiple weeks on Amazon's best-selling Parkinson's book list. Additional books include Everything You Need to Know About Caregiving for Parkinson's Disease and The Complete Guide for People with Parkinson's Disease and Their Loved Ones, along with the new release, The Parkinson's Path, your guide to finding hope, happiness, and meaning on your journey with Parkinson's disease. Lianna, thank you for being here with us today.
Hello, and thank you, Anishka. Thank you for that wonderful, and I know it's a lengthy introduction, but thank you so much. And everyone out there, thank you. Welcome to my third talk in the Caring with Confidence series. I have to say I am very grateful to be able to talk with adult children of people with Parkinson's because I can relate to so much of what you're going through. Also, though, to those of you who are spouses of people with Parkinson's who have joined, thank you. I know that this content will be helpful for you as well. So I have lots to cover with you today. If there's stuff that I go through too quickly that you need to revisit, feel free to watch the recording later. All right, let's go. So first, I wanted to start on a high note because I think it's important to know how having hope can make a real difference in life with Parkinson's. So this picture was taken on the night of my mom and Dave's wedding, their second husband. And what makes it significant, though, is how that night, over 10 years into mom's PD, you wouldn't even known she had the disease. So earlier in that day, she'd been using her cane for assistance in walking and getting ready. But as her nerves faded and the ceremony started, she was full on mom, like mom before pre-PD. And I will always remember this day, not just because she was so happy, not only because it was a fresh start for her and Dave, but also because of how the celebration made us all forget about Parkinson's. And this picture was taken while we were belting out the song, It's a Great Day to Be Alive by Travis Tritt. You can see my sister on the left there. This life with Parkinson's can be so difficult and heavy. And I just look at this picture and these moments like these that remind me that we found light throughout. And as long as mom was with us, we strove to keep finding that light. But when it comes to navigating mood and mind changes in your parent with Parkinson's, having the ability to see that good in the bad times can be very helpful. So I'm going to start with mood, because for many adult children, this is often the first change that you notice, and it's the hardest to understand. You may feel like your parent just isn't themselves anymore, but what is important to know is that these changes are often part of Parkinson's itself, not just a reaction to Parkinson's, and it's not a personality change. So as we go into this section, I want you to keep this in mind, that what feels personal is often neurological. So what do mood changes look like in real life? Well, families often describe it as like a loss of spark. Someone, they kind of just seem flatter, they're quieter, less engaged. You might notice more worry, your parent might need more of reassurance. They may withdraw from conversations, or even things that they used to enjoy they're not doing anymore. It can also show up as irritability or sadness. And again, these changes don't stay the same all the time. They can fluctuate throughout the day. So, especially during off times when your parent is tired or if they're feeling more isolated. So if you're seeing these patterns, you're not imagining things. These are very real, very common parts of Parkinson's. Now, of all the well, I should say the non-motor symptoms that can impact people with Parkinson's, I believe these three of them are mood related. These need more attention. And they certainly weren't talked about when we were living with Parkinson's. I think a lot of folks still don't know much about their impact on PD. I like to use the acronym ADD: apathy, anxiety, depression, and dementia. So let's start with apathy. And the first thing I want you to remember is that apathy is not laziness. So if you think about a cat, I love cats. Cats love to lounge, and they can like spend 12 to 16 hours a day resting. And if you try to move them, they may not be very happy with you. But again, that's a choice. With Parkinson's, it's completely different. Apathy isn't about not wanting to do something. It's about not being able to get started. It's a neurological problem. It's a symptom that affects motivation and initiation. So while it might look similar to the cat, what's happening underneath is very, very different. In fact, apathy can be one of the biggest challenges for people in Parkinson's. Estimates say about 40% of PWPs experience it. For many care partners, especially adult children, it's one of the hardest symptoms to understand and one of the hardest ones to know how to respond to. I get questions, people ask me this all the time. So what is apathy? First of all, what does it look like? Again, it could show up like your parent may not want to start something. They may sit for a long time. They're less engaged in conversation or activities. You might notice less expression overall, fewer reactions, less energy, less response. They may need more cueing to get going. You might have to ask them more times. You might hear them say, "I'm fine," when they're really just doing nothing. And honestly, I think sometimes that can look like them being stubborn, or sometimes you might think that's depression. But in many cases, it's actually apathy. And again, that's a neurological symptom that affects their brain's ability to initiate things. So that distinction is really important because that changes how we as adult children respond. So here are some tips. Many people, again, like I said earlier, ask, what can I do? So first thing is to reduce open-ended questions. So instead of asking, what do you want to do today? Try something like, let's go for a short walk or sit outside for a few minutes. What sounds better? You can like offering two simple choices like, do you want tea or coffee? Or do you want to sit outside or sit in the living room? This helps reduce that cognitive load because they can't, and it also keeps them, gives them control and their dignity, right? You're not trying to take that away. Start with activation, not persuasion. So what I mean by that is, instead of saying something like, you should really get up and move, it'll help you feel better. Try something like, let's stand up together for a minute. With apathy, feeling doesn't come first, action does. So if you're waiting for your parent to get motivated, it's usually not going to work, okay? Gentle action often creates that motivation. You can use routine and external cues, like doing the same thing, doing the exercise or whatever every same time each day. Having reminders for them, like an auditory cue, like an alarm that goes off that says, okay, this is when we're going to go do that thing. Um, because remember that internal go is lost. So you need that external cue to get them going. Another one is you can make things easier by pairing tasks with music. Sometimes that works. Did for my mom. Um, Doing things with them. Definitely doing things during their on times. Don't even think about trying doing things during off times. And the last thing I'd say that I probably should say more often is to zoom out. So sometimes it's better to just to say, okay, does this really matter right now? Instead of just constantly nagging about the person on the couch. Because sometimes them being content is more important than productivity. So if they're happy as a clam sitting there, you know what? Maybe that's all right today. As we're moving on to anxiety, I like this quote by Michael J. Fox because I think, and it's a great one to keep top of mind. I don't think not just for people with Parkinson's, but who get anxious, but as a care partner, myself included, this I could have used back then. Don't spend a lot of time imagining the worst case scenario. It rarely goes down as you imagine it will. And if by some fluke it does, you will have lived it twice. I said when I read that. Anxiety is one of the most common and often most distressing symptoms that families can face. So it's emotional. It is emotional, but it's also physical, and it can be related to medication. It often shows up during off times when meds are wearing off, right? I didn't know that back when I was caring for my mom. That would have been a really important piece of information I could have used. You might see fear, pacing. They could be asking questions over and over again. Sometimes it turns into panic. They resist doing things that they used to like doing. Um, if you can remember this, the anxiety at its core it grows when you're uncertain about something. Your brain can't predict what's coming next, so it goes into this like alarm mode. So if your parent seems more anxious, it's not them being difficult, it's just their nervous system trying to cope. Now, knowing things that might trigger your loved one's anxiety can be very helpful in helping prevent or at least curb that anxiety. And so for my mom, over time, we learned some of the frequent triggers for her. She often got fearful of being stuck somewhere, like her legs were going to shut down if or there's an emergency fire alarm and she couldn't get out. And she's just going to get left behind. That brought her a lot of anxiety. Um, she was, anytime she was in a tight space or if someone rushed her, especially in the morning when she's just getting going, that could bring her a lot of anxiety. Um, Sometimes being in public, dining in public, for example, when she wasn't having a good day, that could spur anxiety. And definitely thunderstorms seemed to trigger her. We lived in an area, and in the summertime we had a lot of those, and she was very, very fearful, over the top fearful of those. So when your parent is anxious, though, the goal shouldn't be to fix everything. I should have known that too, but I didn't. It's to help settle their nervous system. So you can start by lowering the stimulation, whatever, reduce noise, talk less, keep things calm, um, gently orient to the present, where they are, what's happening, use short, simple language. Another thing that can work is focusing on their body first instead of like problem solving. So just taking a deep breath, sometimes movement. We would go for a walk with my mom when she'd have anxiety challenges, just to help reset things. Uh, Very important though, avoid arguing with the fear. It Even if it's illogical, which I thought a lot of times with my mom, like, are you cray cray? Like, that's not mom, like, it's not gonna happen. Um, the feeling for them is very real. Okay. So if anxiety does become overwhelming for them, or you noticing it more and more often, that is a good time to bring in their doctor. Next, D, depression, also very common in Parkinson's. About 50% of people with Parkinson's are impacted by depression. So very important that you know it doesn't just come from the situation like, oh, they're depressed because they have Parkinson's. It can actually start long before those physical symptoms appear because of that change in their brain chemistry, the loss of dopamine, etc. Depression can also make other symptoms feel worse, both physically and emotionally. So it's something we really want to pay attention to. Now, fortunately, it is treatable to some extent. The best outcomes happen with, a combination of counseling, therapy, and right medication. So this is one of those areas where getting help can make a real difference. What does depression look like in Parkinson's? Well, it could show up in a lot of different ways. It can be sadness, hopelessness, withdrawal, but can also be irritability, changes in their sleep, in their appetite. One of the reasons it's so easy to miss this is because it overlaps with other things like grief and fatigue and even apathy, right? So families often think, well, of course they feel this way. And I'll admit, that was me. But we have to be very, very, very careful, because just because something is understandable doesn't mean it should be dismissed. And depression is not just part of a situation, right? It's something we should address. So recognizing that is the first step in getting support. So when do these mood changes cross the line into needing clinical attention? A lot of people ask that question. So if your parent has a low mood most of the time, if they've lost interest in things they used to enjoy, that's a flag, red flag. If anxiety is escalating, especially if it's full-on panic, or if you're seeing them increasingly more and more withdrawn, those are signs that you need to take seriously. I would pay very close attention to big changes after they've had a medication adjustment. That was one that I should have paid more attention to when mom had an adjustment for her dyskinesia, because mood and medication are closely connected. Okay. And most importantly, very, 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 very important, if there's ever concern about safety, thoughts of self-harm, or a sense that they can't cope, that's something you need to act on right away. You don't have to figure this out by yourself. There's counseling, psychiatry, social work support. All these can be very, very, very helpful. And this is definitely a moment where you don't, you want to reach out. That's not overreacting, okay? It's what you should do. Now, sometimes the hardest part isn't knowing what to do, but it's knowing what to say. So I've included a few simple scripts. You learn over time what works best for you. But one thing you could start with is, Mom, I'm not trying to push you. I'm trying to understand what feels hard for you today. Okay, and bring with that empathy. Or would it help if we made this smaller, which can make things more manageable, right? You can also gently name patterns, like, I've noticed your anxiety seems worse before the next dose. I know I like using that. I noticed your whatever. Sometimes the most powerful thing is just to say, Mom, you don't have to explain everything right now. I'm here for you. I'm with you. And if it seems bigger than that, you can say, Dad, this seems like more than a bad day for you. Why don't we bring this to the doctor? You don't need perfect words. You just need that steady, supportive ones. So as we wrap up this section on mood, I want to leave you with a few simple reminders you can come back to. So first, name it. When you can name what's happening, it becomes more manageable. Second, reduce the shame. These changes are not a personal failing of your parent. They're just part of the disease. Third is to track patterns. So mood often connects to things like medication or sleep or stress. And these patterns, if you notice, can give something useful that you could share with the care team. Fourth is to simplify things. When things feel big, bring it down into one small step. And finally, get help sooner than later. You don't have to wait till things are big, huge, massive emergencies. You don't have to handle everything perfectly. You just need to think about that. Now, shifting into the second part of our talk, which is mind. And I know this is where things can start to feel especially difficult for adult children. Changes in thinking and memory, perception can feel like you're slowly losing pieces of the person that you've always known. And for me, that was the case. You could see, seeing confusion, them being forgetful or hallucinations. It can be really disorienting and sometimes heartbreaking. And, but I should say, I want to say this, even as these changes are happening, connection is still possible. And even though it may look different, it might be simpler, you may have to stay in the moment, it's still there. And here's one example. This photo was taken after my mom she was in the late stages, very late stages of dementia, the last of the 4 nursing homes she lived in. And I was living in a different city at the time and surprised her with a visit one afternoon. And what happened in that moment is something I'll never forget, because she looked at me in this way. I felt that we were really, really connecting again, like the old pre-dementia days. She said my name, which she hadn't said very often back then. She was just so happy to see me, and I was so thankful my aunt captured this little shot. But again, that knowing that connection was still possible, even with dementia, and in some people's cases, confusion. So I want to talk about confusion first here, because this is one of the most common and unsettling changes families notice. But I want you to know that it can be intermittent. So one minute your parent might seem like they're totally clear, and then the next minute they're like, what's going on? And they're really confused. So some of that time it's triggers things like illness, if they've had a bad sleep the night before, if they've had a medication change. Hospital stays can make people confused. You may have already experienced that. Overstimulation can also trigger confusion. At home, your parent might like mix up details. They struggle to follow conversations. Again, there's a thread of overwhelmed by too many choices can cause confusion. And so what I want you to know, though, is that if your parent is experiencing some confusion, to know that slowness doesn't necessarily mean memory loss. So sometimes it's just the brain needing more time to process, okay? So think of confusion less as a fixed state and more as something that can shift depend on what's going on around your parent. So how do we respond to confusion when it shows up? First of all, slow down. I know, especially me, my instinct is move faster and explain things more, but that can actually make things harder for them. So try to stick to one idea at a time. Keep your language simple. Cut down choices, because again, too many options make things overwhelming for them. And you can use, if they're confused, you can use things around them to anchor them, like a calendar or family surroundings, or reminding them where they are and what's happening. One thing to remember is to not overcorrect. It's okay if everything's not perfect. Again, connection matters more than accuracy. If they get details wrong, so what, right? It's not the end of the world. One of the things a good guiding question is like, what's the next simplest thing that we can do to help that confusion? I also want to take a moment to clarify something that comes up a lot: confusion versus dementia. So remember that confusion is temporary, right? So that's that fog, it can come in and out, um, tied to things like sleep, illness, medication. Dementia, on the other hand, that's that progressive decline. It affects memory, judgment, ability to manage daily life over time. And you might start to see things like, they're having a trouble following steps, or there's like memory gaps that are getting worse and worse and worse. They're not just like once in a while, but if you start noticing these kind of patterns, it's important that you get a healthcare provider involved to get a proper assessment to find out, is this confusion, is this dementia? Because confusion does not automatically equal dementia. So know that, because that's a really good that's a really good distinction, because well, for me anyway, it helped reduce fear, right? So if it's just confusion, that's okay. There's things that we can do, but also important to understand, is this really dementia? And not to want to be too complicated here, but here's another question I get, and that is just differentiating between the two types of dementia associated with Parkinson's, because the terminology can be a little confusing. So there's Parkinson's disease dementia, PDD, that's what my mom had, and dementia with Lewy bodies, or DLB. And in many ways, they look very similar, and families may notice same kind of changes in their thinking, memory, and awareness. But the big thing here is the differences in the timing. So in Parkinson's disease dementia, again, like my mom, the person has had movement symptoms like tremors, stiffness, etc., for a year or more before their dementia symptoms begin. My mom had Parkinson's for 22 years before she started developing signs of dementia. With dementia with Lewy bodies, however, those cognitive changes show up first, or within that first year of the movement symptoms. So just so that you understand that. And while the names are different, usually what you experience day to day can feel very similar. So you need the same type of support. And as we're talking about mind changes, I just wanted to pause here for a second, because I think this part can be especially hard. Confusion and dementia can change how your parent sounds, how they react, how they connect with you. My mom definitely became a different version of mom. They may say things that sound like, gee, that's not really like them, or respond to you in ways that are hurtful. My mom often, in the beginning of her dementia, she got pretty nasty and angry with me, telling me I locked her up. And in those moments, I got to tell you that back then I did take it personally, but I'm going to tell you, don't take it personally. This is something really important that you remind yourself. This is disease, not the person. The person you love is still there, even if how they express themselves has changed. And when we can hold on to that, it can help us respond with more patience, more compassion, and more grace. And sometimes, even in the middle of these changes, there are moments that remind you, like that one I shared earlier, that they're still there. This photo of mom, mid-stages dementia. She's living in the third of 4 nursing homes that she would eventually stay in. And there was this organ in the common room. She asked that I wheel her over there. She sat down and she started to play. Well, the thing was, what she was playing made no sense. There were just random notes all over the place. They weren't recognizable in any kind of song. In my mom's previous life, she was a proficient piano player, and music was just a part of who she was. And the strange or weird or really interesting thing is that she remembered that she was a piano player. She recognized that she loved playing, but she just didn't realize that she wasn't playing the same way she used to. When I watched her this day, what struck me was it wasn't the notes that she was playing, it was just how much she was emotionally involved in the music. She was just like really swaying, and it just really meant a lot. She was very joyful, and that was just such a beautiful moment for me to witness. All right, shifting gears. I wanted to talk about sleep disorders. I know I've talked about sleep in a previous talks, but just a short, quick uh, touching on this because it often gets overlooked and has a huge impact on the mind. And that, it's not just having a rough night, because sleep can, or poor sleep can worsen your parents' mood. It can make them more confused and make their movement more difficult the next day. So a couple things you need to watch for. If you or if they have caregivers during the day when you're not there, if they're falling asleep regularly during the day, or you hear either from if someone is living with them, your mom or your dad, or living with someone, spouse, and vivid dreams or acting out their dreams in the middle of the night. These are things you need to note, because one of the biggest challenges that families face is just normalizing sleep, poor sleep, for too long. So they're like, well, that's just part of Parkinson's, but actually there's a lot of things that doctors and can do about this. So it's important that you take note, and it's not a lot. I mean, there's a list here, but some of these things, if you can notice patterns, take note of their bedtime, when they're getting up, just simple and consistent tracking. Doesn't have to be complicated, just jot down basics. It's important if your parent is intaking any kind of caffeine, to note when and how often, or sorry, um, how much, if they're, like I said, are they napping a lot during the day? What works or what doesn't work? Have you tested different things? Have you taken out caffeine? Have you, tried reducing naps? Those kind of things. Because if you can take that snapshot and give it to the doctor, it's a lot easier for them to make, assessments about what they might be able to try to help your parent. Hallucinations are another thing, that can be very unsettling for both your parent and you. Um, they're often visual. In my mom's case, they were visual, seeing people, animals, things that aren't there. My mom saw spiders on my face. She would sometimes see Dave in the room, he wasn't there. A big hole in the ground, kids getting swallowed up by the hole. Um, they can sometimes involve other senses, but like I said, usually visual. The experience can vary a lot though. So sometimes it's mild and it doesn't bother them, right? They may understand, oh, this isn't really happening, but that's really strange that I see Dave in the corner. Why is he here? It can, though, other times be very unsettling or very frightening. And it's important to know that these hallucinations can have different causes. So sometimes they're related to medication. Other times they can be part of a progression of dementia. So if this is happening, it's not something to ignore. You want to try to understand that and take it to the care team. Okay. I wrote several things here that might be helpful if your parent is experiencing hallucinations. And some things are like what I did, trial and error. But I did learn that how I responded was really important, and that staying calm was really, really, really important. Because if you reflect that anxiety, or if you start correcting them and say, that's not real, that can make things worse. So try to focus on helping them feel safe instead of joining in with that panic. Um, you can also reduce that stimulation, dim the lighting, less clutter, take them to a quieter space. Like gently redirecting them would help my mom for sure. And note when these are happening, especially, are they always happening, late afternoon, early evening? Is this sundowning? there's something that you can note. Medication changes, like I said, amantadine that my mom took for dyskinesia was one of the core culprits for us. Because all those things, the doctor won't necessarily know. You want to bring that to their attention. All right, and as I'm closing this section on mind, I wanted to share one more story, because even as communication changes, connection is still possible. That's a reminder again that if your parent is experiencing dementia, like my mom did, there's some things. This one was a life picture, they called it. This was something that the nursing home did, the staff did. What they did, they came around, they interviewed families, and in this case, it was me. And they gathered stories about my mom and photos and little details, and they just created this visual collage. They hung it on the wall. And what it was served as a great tool for caregivers or other folks who came to visit my mom to start conversation with her, to bring her back to times when she was younger, perhaps. And and it reminded everyone that this woman was a woman who lived a full, rich life. My mom couldn't communicate a lot anymore back then, so this was just such a nice way for staff to connect with who she really was. All right, and lastly, movement. Let's take a look at how things can aspects of movement can affect people with Parkinson's. If you haven't already experienced freezing of gait or fog, um, congrats, because it was something that really impacted us. And I don't mean that sarcastically, but sometimes, this can be really disrupting, and it's really good to understand triggers for fog. One of the biggest ones was for us, and I think for many, are narrow doorways. That transition, like the brain has to make from one space to another, can really interrupt the brain's movement. Changing direction, like turning or pivoting, can also cause freezing. And again, this is just like when their feet are like, they literally just glued to the floor. They feel like they're glued to the floor. Crowded spaces, huge trigger for my mom. And busy spaces, right? Crowded or busy, whichever, can make it hard for them to keep moving. So when you just knowing these triggers, I think, is helpful so that you can kind of pre-plan ideas of how you might get out of those situations, right? Either avoid them or help if a freezing situation were to happen. And here are some, not all, but many ideas. Always have to try. Not everything works for everybody. For us, counting for mom was really good. 1, 2, 3. Dave loved the left, 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 right, left. He had to go a little slower, but he was in the military, so he liked doing that one to get my mom going again. The biggest one for us was music, and getting a strong, steady beat into my mom's ears helped sometimes instantaneously, but that was a big one. Not everyone reacts the same to external music, so you could suggest internal cueing, like sing a song, like I hear this works, row, row, row your boat, or something like that to get them going, a song. Um, Physical strategies like stepping sideways through a doorway. I swear by that one, worked well for my mom, but again, you have to see what works for your loved one. Stepping over a visual target, like someone else's foot, without tripping them. The laser cane, people have said, really works well for some if they're mobile and they have a cane. But again, these are just all these things. It's just the idea is to be prepared, because freezing can happen anytime. And as I said, music really helped my mom. This is part of who she was. So to get going again, we used it. It was one of our biggest tools. The next slide, it's just a bit over a minute long, and it's an example of how music, even a song that might not have been my mom's style of music, it was my dance music, got her going. And in the video, it was taken at our cottage, which was a very small space where Mom and Dave used to live. And you'll notice that there's a big open space between where her bedroom is and her bathroom. So I want you to notice that. And to the kitchen even, one big wide space. And you'll also notice a wheelchair off to the side. Now, she was in that wheelchair about 50% of her days. So just note that. And finally, I want you to pay attention to the fact that my brother and my sister are in this video and they're encouraging her, which just is another reminder that encouraging never hurts.
I don't even know what they're saying. It's Hey Na Na Na, it's a song. Oh, oh! Mid-air spin. Oh, you're getting a lot of laps, Mom. You're getting a lot of laps done.
All right, thanks for listening to that. It always makes me smile when I watch that. So back to the clear, wide open spaces. When we're shifting and talking about planning to prevent falls, prevention is key. So making small adjustments to your home can really make a difference. I know this is probably very repetitive for some of you. Yeah, I know everything. Well, it's a good reminder anyway. So one of the things that I didn't know back then was people with Parkinson's have difficulty multitasking. So help them stay focused while they're walking. Try to limit their distractions. Even talking can be tough. So try to keep that limited, those distractions. An obvious one, maybe, but make sure medications are taken as prescribed on time because those timing can directly affect their mobility and stability. Okay, if you're not physically present, make sure that their care partner, other people are making sure those medications are getting there on time. Encourage them to have one hand free while they're walking, just to keep them balanced, and support activities that build strength, stability, and balance, like physical therapy or simple daily exercises. You can keep these reminders in a care binder somewhere so that whether it's you or someone else that's caring for your mom or dad has access to these to remember. And here are some well, in theory, Parkinson proof tips if you haven't already gone through these. One of the most effective ways to reduce fall risks is to look at the home and look at how much lighting there is, make sure all the spaces are well lit, especially hallways, bathrooms, nighttime. If your parent is up, that needs to be lit up. Things like mats and carpets and anything that they might trip over, take a look for those. Adding grab bars, we all know about that. Typically safety rails along hallways or stairs. We did that. And I put this in all caps because look at clutter. It seems to be something that some folks really like to hang on to things as they get older. The more open and clear that space, the safer it is to move through. And finally, make sure there's a way to call for help, whether it's, a phone call center or, maybe maybe your parent wears a smartwatch. Make sure they have access to that. And there's a few less obvious ones that in the home that can impact safety. Patterned floors, you may not know about this, but especially busy floral, those old ones, they can actually be confusing to their brain and trigger freezing. So if you want, if that's something that's bothering your parent, you could swap out and put more contrasting pattern in there. Seating, like chairs with firm seats, straight backs to get out of the chair, make it easier for them to stand up. I added this one, keep counters clear of sharp knives, because it only takes one dyskinesia event to knock a sharp knife off that counter where you realize, uh-oh, we should have maybe should not have that. And as your parents' needs are changing, just think about maybe making it wheelchair accessible, and ask an occupational therapist to do a home safety review, especially if your parent is resistant to the things that you're suggesting. This can be really helpful if a third party comes in and they can recommend things specific to your situation. So as we're bringing everything together here, I want to leave you with 3 simple anchors. So mood, name it, don't shame it. What you're seeing is real, it deserves understanding. For your mind, simplify it, try to document things to make things clearer so you can bring that to the care team. And for movement, slow down, use cues, adapt the environment like we just spoke about. And as I'm wrapping up the 3-part care series, Caring with Confidence, I have a few reminders for you. If you were at previous care, if you've watched the other 2, if you're looking for outside help for your parent, a great place to start is your local agency on aging. You can also check out aginglifecare.org if you want someone to help or to manage your parents' care. Case of emergency at home or wherever your parent resides, ensure you have an emergency information sheet that includes all the information that your parent about your parent. For first responders, I've got one included in the resource section. And remember to take that CPR Heimlich course. Everyone who's caring for your parents should have that, because you never know when you might need it. And finally, don't forget to have grace for everyone who's caring. This is really, very hard, including you. And I'm going to finish with this. Caring with confidence doesn't mean you control Parkinson's. It means you trust yourself to handle what comes next. So I'll be honest, most of the time I didn't feel very confident, which is why I thought this was a great series to do. It felt like I was figuring it out as I went. And honestly, over the years, I just learned that confidence doesn't mean that I have to have all the answers. It just means I need to keep showing up, right? So just keep showing up. And I wanted to close with a story that I think captures that. Is at this point, my mom was living in a nursing home. Again, in the mid stages of dementia, her mobility had declined and she was spending most of her day in a wheelchair. At this point, pretty much like 80–90% of the day. And one of the routines we had was after dinner, I would take her for a walk, which really just meant me pushing her in her wheelchair down the hall. But she was in a locked unit for dementia, so she didn't get out much unless I took her out. So I took her outside of that wing of the long-term care unit, and there was a big open space, a lounge with a jukebox in it. And one evening I'm pushing her along, and the music was blaring, and my mom suddenly said, "Stop." So I was like, "What? You like this music?" And so I wheeled her into the room, and without any help, she stood up and she grabbed her chair and she started dancing. And I remember I was like, I couldn't believe it, because this was a woman who could barely walk at that point. And I happened to catch it a bit of on video, not because I was planning on to, but because I didn't want to miss it. And just leave you with this, that moment, which I've seen, many folks have seen this video, but it reminds me that you never know what your presence is going to make possible. And I didn't ever have a perfect plan. I didn't always know what I was doing, but just by being there, we still had moments like this.
New York, I want to wake up in a city
Whoops.
never sleep.
Careful.
And find out day number one, top of the list, king of the hill, and number one. These little town blues. Are melting away. I'm gonna make a brand new start in old New York.
Nice back move. Nice backwards move.
It's up to you, New York, New York, New York.
Take a bow. Whew.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sticking with me until the end. I know that was a lot of information to take in. I love that video. I love that song now. Forever, that New York, New York song is my song. Anyways, as a little thank you, I'd like to share some path pointers from my new book, The Parkinson Path. I specifically chose these are tips that I include at the end of each chapter, and I specifically chose the one on hope that I wanted to share with you guys today, and a Parkinson's emergency information sheet, which I promised you after my last care talk. So again, if you or your loved one has Parkinson's, this new book is for both of you. It's to help you through the emotional side of things. And if you or someone you know might be interested, there's a QR code and there's the link. And also, please feel free to email me your questions or your comments or your critique of my talk. Feel free to email me. You can tell me I talk too fast, and I'll still talk too fast. And finally, I want to thank the American Parkinson Disease Association for this opportunity to present this 3-part Caring with Confidence series. And if you, the watcher, viewer, or missed any of our other sessions, you can find them at the APDA YouTube channel. That's it. That's all.
Thank you, Lianna, for that wonderful presentation. We have some time for questions that have come in from our audience. And the first question is from an adult child of someone with Parkinson's who's asked, do you have any advice for encouraging and helping their mom to find a therapist?
A therapist, for counselor type of thing.
Yes.
If they are, is this initiated by the parent or the child?
We're
Adult
not
child?
sure. We're not sure if this person would like to share a follow-up in the chat, but what we know so far is that they're looking for advice in how to encourage and help their mom to find a therapist.
Yeah, and for us, back, my mom did before she developed dementia, she was very much, she sought counseling, and honestly, that was a bit of a trial and error to find the right one, the right fit. But in terms of where she found it, now things are a lot different now. The reason I asked is it who's, you know, ideally it's coming from the person who needs the help, because apathy, as you know, can make it so they don't want to do that kind of thing. I don't have a quick answer as far as the where for therapy. You got me stuck quickly. I need to think. We actually consulted with one of the local at the time it wasn't Parkinson's Association, but it was an agency that, like a senior care agency, that had some recommendations, because they're not going to specifically necessarily know anything about Parkinson's. They're just there to help with long, like chronic chronic illness, living with the day-to-days of living long-term. And so my mom was able to find one through a referral there. She found a couple through that agency and literally was the old school, sometimes it was meeting for 2 sessions and then realizing this wasn't a fit and then trying another one. But yeah, there wasn't like a quick and easy answer to therapy. And nowadays, I would say there's so many options. Anishka, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think that
The
if
social worker can
yeah,
help.
if the movement disorder clinic where this person's mom is going for her care, they might have a social worker who can recommend therapists who have worked with other people with Parkinson's disease. I think that would be a great place to start. Reach out to your local APDA chapter for help. Lianna, what do you think about a situation where maybe someone thinks that their parent might benefit from therapy, but their parent hasn't brought that up yet? Do you have any suggestions on, maybe encouraging the parent to think about attending therapy?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely conversations, and it totally depends on the personality of your parent, because some are going to be more open-minded than others. I've talked about this before where it can come down to like my dad versus my mom. Just naturally, one was more open to talking about things. Pride got in the way a little bit with my dad. And I have a lot of grace for that, but so they may not want to talk about the fact that they need or they may needing some help. Um, but gentle, open conversations about, hey, mom, or hey, dad, I noticed, insert line of, that you're feeling, or I'm trying to think of a script for this one, but in my case, it was it- we didn't have to we didn't have to. My mom already really wanted to help. We just helped her in terms of like, have you tried? What will you think about asking open these questions of like, would something like this help? Would something like this help? What do you think, mom? Like keeping them involved in terms of definitely making sure that I'm not taking over her life. Like, this is totally up to you what you want to do with this. We knew that others had help, at APDA. Well, I heard, this might have worked or this might have worked. And I don't know, like, again, it's so specific to your parent, but the key for me is making sure that they feel like their autonomy is not being taken away, that you're suggesting, not saying you should do this. Suggesting works way better, or asking questions works way better.
Great. Thank you. And we have had a couple of questions from people who are interested in, the handouts and resources that you have mentioned in this presentation as well as the other ones. Are they in the resource section of the platform? Is there a way that they can get those resources? Should they email you to request resources from this
Yeah,
talk?
you can email me. I thought the ones today I thought might be attached. Are they not today? And the ones from the previous chats for sure, I can send you. That emergency sheet was for today. And I shared some of the path pointers at my previous 2 talks. So yeah, absolutely email me. I'll send you the PDF. The path pointers are all in the book. And so far, they are getting a lot of positive response. So I encourage you to check that out. But happy to send you those for free. You don't have to spend a dime on that if you don't want to. So yeah, email me.
Thank you. And just so everyone knows, if you check on the resource section of the 10 events platform today, you should be able to see those resources that Lianna mentioned, and you can also email her for any other resource needs. So I think that is all the time we have for today, but really on behalf of our audience, on behalf of APDA, thank you, Lianna, for sharing your insights from your journey with your mom. We truly appreciate you sharing these pieces of advice that come from firsthand experience. So thank you. And thank you so much to our audience as well for tuning in to this series, Caring with Confidence. I would like to invite you all to join us later this week on April 2nd for our episode of Unlocking Strength Within, Vulnerability, Misinformation, and the Power of Pause. Thank you again, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Take care, and we'll see you soon.
Hi, I'm Leslie Chambers, President and CEO of the American Parkinson Disease Association. Thank you so much for joining us today on our program. Every day, APDA is committed to providing helpful programs just like this one, as well as a wide variety of support groups, exercise classes, and educational programs to support the Parkinson's disease community. Whether online or in person, APDA is here for you every step of the way. You can find all of our upcoming virtual events on our website at apdaparkinson.org/events. We keep you posted on our social media channels as well, so make sure you follow us there. You can also connect to local resources and events through our nationwide network of chapters and information and referral centers. Remember, we're just a click or a phone call away. If you've enjoyed today's broadcast, I hope you will consider making a donation to help keep programs like this possible. Every gift, large or small, helps APDA support people living with PD through thoughtful programming, reliable resources, groundbreaking research, and more. Please visit apdaparkinson.org/donate today to support our critical work for those with Parkinson's. We are so grateful for your generosity. Thank you.